Coming on the wheels of steel, my man represents from out there in Strong Alley. He go by the name of Johnny Juice. Juice, let it loose.
You're now listening to the legendary Vinyl Esquire. Vinyl Esquire. Vinyl Esquire. Vinyl Esquire.
The podcast that uplifts the DJ culture and honors our legends. Vinyl Esquire with DJ Rip.
Vinyl
He go by
Esquire.
the name of Johnny Juice.
Vinyl Esquire. Culture, truth, music.
Vinyl Esquire.
The podcast that uplifts the DJ culture and honors our legends. Vinyl Esquire with DJ Rip.
He go by the name of Johnny Juice.
Vinyl Esquire. Vinyl Esquire. Hello world. I want to welcome you to Vinyl Esquire, the podcast that delivers culture, truth, music. Would you join me, please, in welcoming DJ Rip?
Hello world, I want to welcome you to Vinyl Esquire, and my name is DJ Rip, and Vinyl Esquire is the podcast that uplifts the DJ culture and honors our legends. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to Vinyl Esquire, the legendary DJ, platinum producer, composer, turntablist, Emmy and NAACP Image Award nominee, engineer, b-boy, graph writer, MC, and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, the legendary DJ Johnny Juice.
How you doing, man?
Juice, how you doing, man? How's it going?
I am cold lamping without flavor.
Cold lamping without flavor. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's both.
Okay, no doubt about it. So Juice, listen, man, I want to thank you for allowing me to interview you on Vinyl Esquire. This is the DJ podcast that uplifts the DJ culture and honors our legends, and you're definitely a legendary DJ. So let's go ahead and get right to it. I want to take it all the way back to the beginning for you, Juice. Is that cool?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so Johnny Juice, who or what made you want to be a DJ?
I grew up in the Bronx in the 70s, so I saw all of this happening right outside my window. So I would say the environment, possibly. I started out as a b-boy and a graffiti writer first, but I had an older cousin named Benji who had a set of equipment. He wasn't really doing scratching or anything like that, but he had some DJ equipment, and I would say he was the first person that really made me want to look at being a DJ.
So what year would you say you started, and what was your first DJ name?
Well, I first started DJing sometime around 79, 80 on Benji's equipment, but I didn't have a DJ name, but I was named Johnny Juice as an infant by a friend of the family's named Gabe, so my name's always been Juice.
Got you. So once you decided to say, I need a name, you just decided to call yourself DJ Johnny Juice, yeah?
That's correct.
Got you. So you said you started in about 79, would you say?
Yeah, about that time. I didn't have any equipment, though, so I was using my cousin's.
Got you. So why don't you talk to me about your beginnings? You were born in the Bronx, but you end up relocating to Long Island, right? So,
Right.
So why don't you talk to me about your beginnings in hip hop? What was it, like for you in the beginnings, you being a DJ?
Well, I started out obviously living in the Bronx. I lived in Patterson Projects when I was real young. That's where DJ AJ's from. AG from Showbiz and AG's from Patterson. AG's younger than me, but AJ, rest in peace, was older than me, obviously. Flash used to DJ in the park at 18 Park back there, so I would hear that and see it. My aunt, who was about 10 years older than me, she would be babysitting me, and she would go back there, hang out with her friends, and I would see it. So that's what got me sparked into the hip hop vibe. I started b-boying first because dancing, everybody likes watching a little kid dance. It's always cool. I was never allowed to go near any turntables or anything like that. Then I moved few blocks away to Michelangelo houses, which was on 149th and Morris Avenue. And I lived next door to the legendary Joe Conzo, the guy who took all them pics of the Cold Crush brothers and all those cats back in the days. Joe Conzo was my neighbor, and I hung out with his younger brother Jared and his brother Eric and his sister Lupe. Those were like my peeps.
Okay.
So Joe always had the Cold Crush brothers over there. or some other b-boys or hip-hop related people there, and his father managed Tito Puente, I believe, and his mother was an activist, so that house was full of, like, a whole bunch of great energy. So I would always be around with Eric or Jared, really, and Boo Boo, my boy Boo Boo, who was also in Joe's book, Born in the Bronx, and that kind of sparked me to the b-boy aspect. But first time I saw somebody DJ, like I said, my cousin saw the lights and all the equipment. I'm a tech head. That made me want to do that. Started going over my cousin's house. He was actually really my mom's cousin. She's my second cousin.
Gotcha.
So I'll go over to her house, and and there wasn't really a lot of people my age there because it's my mom's cousin, their age. But he was like only a year or two older than me. So I would hang out with him. And eventually, we won a lawsuit against a hospital or a doctor. We moved to Long Island in the 80s. Started a b-boy crew out there, and eventually was able to convince my mom to buy me some DJ equipment. Upon winning a martial arts tournament, I'm a long time martial artist. I went to the Junior Olympics, so she told me if I won the Junior Olympics, she'd buy me the equipment. So I won, so she bought me the equipment.
Wow. Okay, so you really got your thing moving in Long Island versus the Bronx. Is that correct?
As a DJ, yes.
Got you. So talk to me about your involvement in Long Island's hip-hop movement and the whole scene in Long Island, because there was a lot going on there as well.
When I moved out to Long Island, I didn't see anything happening out there. So I started b-boying, and I created a crew with a couple of cats around the way. One of those cats that came to look for me, he was a little younger than me. His name was Trevor Smith. Came to me with his little brother and asked to be part of my crew. Years later, Trevor Smith would become Busta Rhymes. So we started a little b-boy crew. We would battle these cats from the other side of town. One of those cats was Brian Higgins. That dude would later go on to be Charlie Brown. So
nice.
The b-boy crew would go, we would battle against these guys. They'd battle us. And then eventually I started DJing more and more with a cat right around the corner from me named DJ Will, who was a little older than me. And Will had equipment. I still didn't have equipment at this time. So I would hang out at his crib and DJ every time those guys would go smoke weed. So they would go smoke, and I would get on, and he would let me get on until they got back. So I was over there as much as I could be until eventually he told me about a dude named DJ Hig, who kind of ran a lot of the clubs. Well, he didn't run the clubs. He was the DJ at the clubs. One of the most prolific DJs in Long Island. Met Hig at ironically, a b-boy contest at a teen nightclub I went to. I ended up entering the battle only because I didn't have money to get into the club, and I ended up winning the battle, the b-boy battle. But I went to him and I asked him to battle on the turntables, and he laughed at me because I was younger than him, and he was like, "Come on, son." And he told me my battle was boy, and I won. He would talk to me. So I battled this boy. His boy battled me with the record "It's Time," Al Nairfish, The Soul. His name was DJ Andy. I'll never forget because he had a shirt that said DJ Andy. And I smoked him. And then Hig was like, "You need to come to my crib." Ends up that Hig's younger brother was the guy that would become Charlie Brown. So me and Hig became DJ partners. Me and Busta and them same dudes that b-boyed with me became a rap crew. Eventually, those guys just stopped being interested in that. But I continued with Bus, and then of course and then it was Brown. So me, Brown, and Busta had a crew together called the Bum Rush Crew. And
okay.
And that was our thing. We would make little mixtapes at my crib, little pause button tapes, things like that. We did dance routines, everything to our whole little crew had a structure to it. And eventually we heard about a contest that Chuck and those guys were having. They weren't Public Enemy yet. They were still Spectrum City.
Right.
They did radio at BAU, and they were having a contest in Hempstead. We heard from a friend of Higgs, actually, who had a little rehearsal studio, a band rehearsal studio downstairs under their spot. That friend was Eric Sadler, who would go on to become a member of the Bomb Squad. So Eric called Higgs, said, "Yo, tell your boys to come up here. There's a little battle that they're trying to give people record deals." So me and Brown went. Busta was in Brooklyn visiting his father. I was actually in the Bronx visiting family. And so we got there, and the line was around the corner. And we were probably the youngest dudes there. and we battled individually. I thought it would be as a crew, but I ended up winning the DJ battle. And
okay.
And that's how I ended up getting down with PE.
Okay, so when I originally asked you how were you involved with the Long Island hip hop movement or the scene, you said there wasn't one. So would you say that you helped build that? Now, I do understand that Spectrum City, Hank Shockley, Keith Shockley, the Shockley brothers were already DJing and whatnot. Do you think that, did you know much about Spectrum City before you went to that talent contest?
Oh yeah, they did radio every Monday night, and they do jams all the time. So Spectrum City had something happening. The original concept, Dre and them dudes, they were a mobile DJ unit too, before they got signed as original concept. There was TBA, the best around. That was Higgs group that was going around doing mobile. There was a bunch of mobile cats doing things. I'm talking about like a solidified hip hop scene. Negative. There were cats doing stuff. There was the Choice 5 MCs. There was Woody. He became one of the guys became Rock with Uptown, but he was Woody D. Three of the other dudes in the Choice 5 became Seriously Fine. Signed, I think Arista. They were signed with Jam Master Jay's production company. So there was cats doing it, but as a scene, no. Gotcha. Hig was actually instrumental in getting hip hop into the clubs out there because Long Island, Long Island clubs were kind of either run by the mob or people like that. So, there was very little black music presence in these clubs, a lot of dance music. And Hig would actually play, popular rap, and he would try to push the envelope, putting more and more hip hop into his sets, even though he was told, hey, that's too much of that. Because they didn't, these guys didn't want black people coming to their clubs.
Gotcha.
But eventually, hip hop just started blowing up. Hig started playing more and more of it. So DJ Hig was very instrumental in making sure that hip hop was very represented, very much represented in the clubs in Long Island. And because of that, they gave us the opportunity to go out and perform at some of the spots. Me and Brown performed as a group called the Bum Rush 2 with my boy Ian. We opened up for Alicia, that freestyle chick. So, that's the kind of people that were performing. Alicia would come on, do Tune Turned On, one of our songs, and then we'd come on before them and rock some hip hop. So it wasn't like it was a hip hop night or hip hop anything. It was really integrated. So when you say there's a scene, not really like that.
Got you. I
think one of the things that helped contribute to the scene was Chuck and those dudes up at 510, because that we call it 510. That was the building in Hempstead, 510 South Franklin Street. They brought a lot of people there. Like I said, they had that contest. I got signed as a member of the Kings of Pressure. They were trying to sign other groups. So all these groups were coming out of this area, 510. Keith and Hank, then Eric from downstairs, and of course he came upstairs, and along with myself and Chuck, we became later on the Bomb Squad. But the Bomb Squad name didn't happen to the third PE album. So
right, okay. So hold on, I want to get to that. Hold up, let's back up. You bounced over something here. Okay, so talk to me about, because what I'm trying to do is connect the dots with Spectrum City, Long Island, Public Enemy, and Johnny Juice, and your real involvement and your real influence, right? Okay. So talk to me about, you said Kings of Pressure, which was a rap group. Talk to me about Kings of Pressure and that talent contest and how this whole thing kind of played out with, your involvement and how it grew.
All right, well, the whole point of Chuck's and Hank's vision was they ran radio doing BAU, and they were on the cusp of signing a deal with Def Jam for Public Enemy, which was only really Flavor and Chuck. They're the only ones that signed to Def Jam. So the whole point was not really to make Public Enemy blow up, but they wanted to create an environment of groups that they managed and they booked and that whole thing. That's what they really wanted to do. They wanted to do radio. Public Enemy was a 2-year project for them. 2-year in and out and done.
Okay.
Being that Chuck was a graphic arts major, he has a degree in graphic design from Adelphi. he drew logos of all these groups. He had names of groups before there were people to populate them. And him and Hank would find people to populate those group names. One of the names was Kings of Pressure. Another name was Leaders of the New School. Another name was Son of Berserk and the Hell Raiders. And all these names and ideas for what the groups would be. And he had logos for them and everything. The first group they were looking for was the Kings of Pressure. He basically wanted what would be a 1980s version of MOP. A whole bunch of loud, obnoxious, in-your-face, rough, rugged, style, group vocals, mad MCs, so it was 4 MCs and 2 DJs was the idea. It ended up being 4 MCs and me.
Okay.
And
okay.
Right. So that was the whole idea. So once we got that done, we got signed. Simultaneously, Chuck was working on a project called Public Enemy. And Chuck was the one that gave me a ride to and from home because I didn't have a car at the time. So Chuck would give me a ride home, and then one day he says, "Yo, we're doing our album." I'm like, "Oh, Spectrum City, cool," because they did a few records back in the days that they got to check out the Radio and Lives on Vanguard.
Right,
so
right.
He said, "Well, yeah, this is not going to be called Spectrum City. We're going to be called Public Enemy." And he says, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "All right, well, let me hear it." So he put in the tape. And it was the beat to what would later be My Uzi Weighs a Ton. So he was like, "Yo, I come get you next weekend. You want to come to the studio and do some scratches on the album?" I'm like, "Okay." I mean, I'm a kid. I'm in high school. I'm like, I'm down for whatever. And that's exactly what happened. I came with him to INS recording when Booty, the guy that wrote The Message, was actually recording in an adjacent room.
Wow.
And,
okay.
Yep. And we ended up I ended up with me and Terminator were both there at the same time. Melody at the time.
Right.
Ended up doing all the scratching on the first Public Enemy album.
Wow.
And when I wasn't doing that, when they were working on other parts of the song or doing vocals, Eric Sadler was in the room teaching me and Keith how to use some of the drum machines like the SP1200 and the S900 sampler and things like that. So I got a little history lesson on analog and digital instrumentation and how to use it. And I basically had a master class on how to make records in a very short amount of time.
Wow. Okay, so let's unpack this just a little bit. You said you did all the scratching on Yo Bum Rush the Show, Public Enemy's first album.
I didn't do all of it. I did a lot of it.
Okay.
It was me and Terminator. So the way it worked was like this. And I've heard people say it was a competition. It wasn't a competition. Chuck and those guys are trying to come under budget as much as possible because they knew the game and they didn't want to go over budget. They didn't want to have to recoup a bunch of money. So they said most of the pre-production was done in our spot 510. And then when we got there, boom, let's just lay the stuff, knock it out. We got to go. So Terminator was obviously, since he was their DJ, given, first crack at the song. So it was like, here, get down on it, do something. If it worked, fine. If it needed something more or he couldn't do what Hank and Chuck was kind of visioning in their head, he was like, Juice, your turn. And I would get on and do it. So it just ends up that because of that, a lot of the more advanced stuff ended up being the stuff that I did. Not because he couldn't do it, I guess, but because we was pressed for time and we had two different styles. So Chuck likes to say that Terminator was like a curveball pitcher and I was the fastball pitcher.
So why? Okay. So what I'm asking is why did it end up being Terminator Rex as the DJ for the group, and why didn't they just have two DJs? Why did you end up, not moving forward publicly with Public Enemy?
Well, keep in mind, at the time, Norman was always their DJ. He was, if you listen to Public Enemy #1, Chuck says, Chucky D, myself, and KG, Flavor, DJ Mellow D. KG was Keith Shockley, and Mellow D was Terminator.
Right, okay.
Those were the two DJs they had when they were a mobile DJ unit.
Right.
Now, keep in mind, they were a mobile DJ unit. None of them were battle DJs. None of them were really scratch DJs. They rocked parties. I did parties too.
Got you.
But I also did a lot of scratching. So, why didn't he put me down? Keep in mind, Terminator wasn't signed to Def Jam. Only Chuck and Flav. So, the being a DJ, or even Griff and those dudes, those guys were only, live show and tour people only. So why would they need two DJs? It isn't like now you would have like Jam Master Jay was signed to a deal with Run DMC when he got down. You know, there's some DJs that like Ali Shaheed that was signed as a member of Tribe.
Right, I got you. Yeah.
And they weren't signed, so it's like, you know, what were they going to do with me? Just add another DJ to split money with on a tour?
Gotcha.
You know, so it wasn't really necessary. But that was happening a lot. Howie T did a lot of Howie T did the scratches for Silver Spinner on We're Only Bugging. It wasn't Silver Spinner. Jazzy J did all the scratches on Radio by LL Cool J.
Yeah.
Bobcat did all the scratches for the second LL Cool J album. Cut Creator literally did no scratches on any of those records. So the thing is, it's like, you know, we got to get these records done.
Right. Yeah, I'm aware of all of that, and it just, I wasn't aware. Now, again, I've heard rumors about what you've done in the studio for these particular albums. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you know, I didn't have any proof. You know what I mean? Or didn't hear it from you. You know what I mean? So it was just kind of like speculation. But yes, you're right. So you were literally just a part of the team finishing the project. You know, and scratches were some of the things you provided. Yeah. Right.
And eventually, you know, the idea was, because remember all those group names, right? It was like, how are we going to get all this done? So the idea was assembly line. We were going to do this like Motown. You know what I'm saying? Multiple producers. We're going to split up projects. You know, you get a project over here, maybe Keith and me could split off and do that, while Eric split off with Hank and did this stuff. Or maybe all of us together would do this. And that was the idea, to knock out as much production as possible, you know, with the team we had. And, you know, it started to work until, you know, business was like not really being run correctly. So. Right.
So, okay. So Kings of Pressure, leaders of
True
the
Mathematics.
Leaders of the New School, Son of Berserk, Public Enemy. Am I missing someone?
True Mathematics. He did For the Money, and he also did All the Greeks in the House. Robert S.
Okay.
We ended up doing Slick Rick's first album, half of it.
Okay, hold on. I want to get into your other production, you know, a little later. Okay, so what else did you do for the Public Enemy albums? So you said Yo Bummers, The Show, and what else?
And I did A Nation of Millions. Those are the two albums I did. After that, I left. Obviously, I came back, but years later. But He's Got Game, I came back. But yeah, those first two albums are the ones I did for them before I ended up leaving and becoming part of a class action lawsuit.
So, and your involvement was you provided scratches for the two albums, right?
Scratches, samples, whatever was needed at the time.
Got you. So it was like a conglomerate. Everybody was together and just finishing these projects. Okay, cool. So, how did you originally get into production? Was it at that time, like you said that, you know, Eric Sadler was showing you some of the drum machines? Was that your first time producing? Is that how you got into producing?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, obviously, you know, back at the crib with me, Brown and Bus, we were doing stuff, you know, at the crib. But, you know, professionally, yeah, you know, working with the PE Records, we would come into 510. Keith might be in there with a record on the turntable, and he's listening to it, trying to loop it up on the Mirage. And then all of a sudden it's like, yo, I got something for that. And I go grab a record. And, you know, Eric will come in and be like, what's up, guys? And we're like, yo, can you play a bass on this? Because Eric played instruments. We wasn't really adept musicians at the time. You know, it was kind of like that thing. Hank was mainly an overseer. I don't ever recall him ever touching a drum machine or anything like that. He would come in and be like, yo, that's dope. You know, that needs a little more, you know, agitation. He would say something like that and leave and then come back. And, you know, he was more of the Quincy Jones type of producer where he'd oversaw the project. I never saw him program a beat. Not saying he hasn't. I'm saying I never saw him do it.
Got you.
And, you know, it was mainly Keith and Eric and then myself, you know, adding in what I can. And then sometimes, because things weren't always sequenced, they would be triggered live. I remember one time me and Eric were sitting there and we both were on the keyboard and I'm triggering a sample for one piece and he's triggering a sample for another piece through the whole song.
Wow. Okay, so let me ask you this question. Now, you don't really ever get mentioned And I want to know from your perspective why, like, the conversation about the Bomb Squad, right? I know the Bomb Squad, the name, and that didn't happen till you said like the third or fourth, PE album, third album. Okay. However, why does it seem like your name isn't mentioned in creating these masterpieces? Because let's be clear, Public Enemy changed hip hop forever, right? And the Bomb Squad sound and that production style influenced all of hip hop and all producers after that, right? And then Leaders of the New School on Electra, that was a dope group spawning Busta Rhymes, and they had dope hip hop records. Kings of Pressure, Son of Berserk. I mean, y'all were doing a lot of dope shit. So what I'm asking you is that from your perspective, why does it seem like you're not included in this story?
That's a good question. I mean, maybe because I started initially as a minor. I was 17 or something like that. And eventually, became an adult and was able to handle the business. But, I started as a minor. They thought I was replaceable. I remember working on Vanessa Williams, The Right Stuff. I'm in the studio and I realized something was wrong. And I asked Hank to talk to him. I'm like, yo, can I talk to you? Being, as respectful as possible. I'm like, yo, man, this is an R&B song and you trying to pay me this much. I don't think that's fair. And I think this should be, what it was. I discussed my stuff with him. And he looked at me and he looked at Keith and he goes, Keith, take him home. So it was kind of like, yo, you're replaceable, dude. So, what are you going to do at that point? You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
And,
okay.
And that's, it is what it is. The irony is, obviously, Public Enemy was sued years later for the samples they use on a lot of these records. And I was asked to recreate the masters from scratch,
wow.
which I find ironic. I'm like, why can't Hank do it? Because he can't.
Wow.
Ask Eric to do it. Eric can't. Keith can't. They can't do it by themselves. I'm the only member that can do everything by myself. I can program the stuff. I remember all the samples. And I'm the only one that could scratch them together like that. And I could play the instruments now. Maybe I didn't back in the days, but I can play quite a few instruments at this point. So I can do them from scratch, all of them. And I have. I've remade the masters to You're Gonna Get Yours. I remade the masters to Welcome to the Terror Dome that was using a Samsung commercial. We redo the masters that way they don't have to go and get them from Universal.
Right. That's incredible. So, so again, when I introduced you, producer, composer, songwriter, musician, on and on and on, the accolades are there. And that's why I wanted to know why, it seems like you were, I don't know if it was, deliberate or not, that it seems like you were written out of the story now. But clearly the work is there and the talent is there. And you can't be erased, right? So you've also worked with Beastie Boys, DMC, Slick Rick, and many more artists. How was it like working with some of the other artists outside of, the Public Enemy camp or the Long Island, Long Island artists?
Well, the way I approached it was business. Keep in mind, a lot of these artists weren't big artists, at the time. A lot of people ask me now, what is it like working with Chuck? I'm like, Chuck is just like anybody else that when you start a new band and you hope you make it,
right?
You're in the studio work. I understand working with Chuck now, 35 or 37 years later, for someone that's never worked with him, it's like, oh my God, I get to work with Chuck D. But at the time, you just a new dude saying, this might blow up. I've been through a million of those. Some of them happen, some of them don't. So if they do happen and these guys blow up, I'm lucky all of a sudden. But what about the ones that I worked with that never blew up? Was I lucky to work on their stuff too? It was still good stuff. It just didn't hit. But I looked at it as, every song, every project I worked on, how do I get this to be the best it could possibly be? What can I do to serve the music? And that's what it was. I went into the studio with Slick Rick. He had already done at that point Lottie Dottie and the show. So he already had his legend was already his legendary status was starting to be written already.
Right.
So he's doing this album. Jam Master Jay did, a lot of the early stuff, for him, the Ruler's Back and all that stuff. But we were doing different stuff. I looked at it as, all right, this is Rick. He did his 2 joints that were pretty, with Dougie, they were dope, but, he's not with Doug, let's do something. I went in there and it was strictly business. When I did the Beastie Boys stuff, it just so happened that the dude that was supposed to do scratching and some other stuff, I don't know, didn't show up or whatever. I was at a dinner or lunch with Rick Rubin, Russell, and Chuck. I was actually being taken home by Chuck from a session we were doing. It just so happens that, hey, we doing this thing with Rick real quick before we go home. Is that cool? I'm like, whatever, I'm with you. You my ride. We go there. Rick's talking about, I don't know, I gotta leave early because the DJ ain't gonna show up and I need somebody to do whatever. Chuck's like, you can use Juice. So, and he's like, and Rick is like, who's Juice? He's like, you know the stuff we've been sending you? That's Juice on that. He's like, oh, let's go. We go in the studio and I'm doing stuff with Rick and it's the Beastie Boys. I mean, it is what it is. You go in there, you do it, you do what they ask. If they ask for ideas, you give them ideas. If they like them, they use them. And I've been fortunate enough to be around enough people with talent that asked me my opinion and asked me what I could bring to the table other than just do this, and that's how I seen all my projects. Wow. Of course, later on, I worked with with Mandrill, which I'm still working with them. Matter of fact, they're about to drop a new album after I don't know how many years, and I'm an official member of Mandrill now. Wow, that's incredible. Okay. Yeah, so that's different. Now I'm stepping in the studio with dudes that I sampled, right. But it's a family, I talked to Dr. Rick Wilson. He called me yesterday and it's like, hey, Johnny Juice. Like, hi, Dr. Rick. And when we talk, it's a family thing, I respect his artistry and thankfully he respects my artistry. And I also play percussion. I play drums. I'm Puerto Rican. So, I do that and I've done that for a long time. So that's right up their alley. They're a Latin rock, soul, whatever band, right? Panamanian. From Brooklyn, so they see what I can bring and they respect it. And anytime you're around other musicians and they show that respect, it's a special thing. It's like a brotherhood. Absolutely. Well, again, I wanted to highlight some of the things that you've done because I don't know how many people, actually know you worked on Slick Rick's first album, right? Or all the things that you did with Public Enemy. I mean, at any point, did you hear the music? I mean, I know a cliche question is did you guys know you were making history when you did it? Of course you didn't, right? However, what point did you know, like, wait a minute, Public Enemy is everywhere. It hit, like, you know what I mean? Like, when did you know, like, this shit right here is special? You know what I mean? Well, the thing is, Chuck, when he made the records, he always we were in Long Island, right? The difference between Long Island and New York City is in the city, I live in the Bronx, you jump on a train, hit a 4 train, go down to Manhattan, whatever. When you in Long Island, you're driving. That's it. There's public transportation, but you're driving. Right. So how do you know something's banging? You hear it playing out of your car. So Chuck would give a signature piece of sample or musicianship that will emanate from your car that you would know was him. When you hear that Moog, that Moog, Public Enemy #1, it's Moog, right? When you hear that sound, and a car drives by you know that's a Public Enemy record. Right. You know what I'm saying? So, he did that on purpose because he knew if we heard, if somebody drove by playing one of our songs, we'd know it. So that was his idea behind that kind of thing, musically. And because of that, it wasn't like we were trying to make history, but we were just trying to be different. And that was a big part of hip hop at one point. When I was a B-boy, what's going to separate me from battle? When I battle these cats, as opposed to what, my man right here, Abby or Rubber Band or these dudes, what's his signature move? Well, I got to come with a signature move. So when I battle, they say, oh, Juice did this, whatever move, and that's it. So same thing as a DJ. Same thing as a producer or a group. We try to define a sound, not necessarily because we want to make history, but more so that we want to stand out from everybody else. And we knew we were doing that. Did we know it was going to catch and light fire like that? No. But when it really caught, it was really Rebel Without a Pause. So I was getting ready to ask you that. Go ahead. Talk to me about that record. Yes. Well, the thing is, because Beastie Boys came out with their album in 86. Public Enemy's first album was done right at the end of 86, but because Beastie Boys record was out, Def Jam pushed back the release of Yo Bum Rups the Show. Because they did that, we started working on the second album already. That's why You're Gonna Get Yours single, which is from the first album, has Rebel on the B-side, which is from the second album.
Right.
Because we already halfway through the second album by the time the first album dropped. That's how I was able to do the scratches on the Terminator X Getaway version with the vocals. The album was out by the time we dropped the single. So I pretty much had Steve Ett, rest in peace, put all the vocals on mute, play back the instrumental, and I just scratched over it. So, the actual vocal version from the album with the EQ so that the bass didn't,
right,
interfere too much. But that, and ironically, I was using the Bobcats mixer that he was using to do Bad for LL Cool J. I used his DJ mixer, which was missing fader knobs and shit. But we did that at Chunk King. So those kind of things we did, basically what can we do to push the envelope? And I don't think it was, how, is this going to make, a big, huge splash, or more like we're going to just piss people off? And Rebel was made pretty much to get back at Mr. Magic for calling us, suckers and dissing our sound.
Right. Okay. So wait. All right. So, So the Terminator X version, what is it? You're going to Get Yours, right?
You're going to Get Yours? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was always dope to me that there would be these 12 inches through Public Enemy, that you would have these DJ versions of the songs, right?
Right.
So I know Terminator X on the Edge of Panic has one. And did you do the scratching on that one? Or was that you did? Okay. So did you get any credit for the scratches on any of that? Because no one knows that you did that. Wow.
No, and I'll tell you why. The first album when we did it, Chuck tried to, I don't know if it was Chuck or Hank, whoever did it, but they were trying to position it to look like a band. That's why I said rhythm scratch and lead scratch, and that didn't matter. Scratching was whoever did the scratches on it. But on the second album, I started doing scratches on it, and they started assembling credits, but then I left, and they just stopped assembling credits for anything I did. And that's why my name's not on Slick Rick's album either. A lot of things that ain't on there. And, like I said, it is what it is. Eventually, there was a big issue with the management company that Chuck and Hank started with the People, Ron Scola and Ed Chaplin. And there was a huge lawsuit that was brought about by Dr. Dre, Andre Brown. And, everybody was kind of getting screwed a little bit. But it wasn't just credits. And that's why the name The Bomb Squad happened. Apparently, people were mad about the stuff they were doing that they didn't get credit on, including Keith and Eric. And they won't never say this, out loud, because Keith is Hank's brother. And Eric, I think, is actually really related to them, like, some kind of, extended family somehow, which was unknown to them at the time. But Eric will never say anything like that publicly, because Eric is the nicest guy on the planet. And Eric and these guys had an issue, so Chuck created a solution. It's just named as Unit the Bomb Squad, and no matter who does what, everybody will get credit.
Got you. Okay.
Now the thing is, mainly it's because, Hank, where were you? I think the book Rakim told me, Eric told the story, not meaning to diss Hank, but meaning to show how wild the situation was Ice Cube was Ice Cube kept coming to the studio talking about, yo, where's Hank, man? I better have this album done before NWA finishes their album. But in telling that story about how Ice Cube was being gangster, he inadvertently told the story how Hank wasn't dead.
Got you. Wow. Okay. Well, clearly you were, obviously. And again, these are masterpieces. I mean, and again, I would have had no idea you did the scratching. I mean, a lot of people don't even know about some of those records because you had to be a DJ and buy the 12-inch, of Rebel Without a Pause. Sure. To flip it over and to see You're Gonna Get Yours with a DJ version on it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I would have never known that you did the scratching on it. Those are classics, incredible records. So, okay. So, talk to me about Now, again, we had already mentioned that, your production and your involvement with Public Enemy, which was groundbreaking. You've also worked with the Beastie Boys, DMC, Slick Rick, and many more. But you also got into TV and film scoring, like for ESPN. Talk to me a little bit about that.
The film scoring? Sure. It started out with, like, when we did He Got Game, we did the soundtrack, not the score, but we did the soundtrack. And one of the things that was interesting was they wanted the stuff at 5.1 surround, and no one in the crew did 5.1 surround. I was brought back, ironically, by Eric Sadler. That was supposed to be the return of the original Bomb Squad. Right? So Eric called me and was like, "Listen, I know you don't want to mess with this." He was like, he already knew the situation. And I went to the military, by the way, right after the second PE album. I went to the military for 6 years.
Wow.
So
okay, I didn't know that either.
So I went to the military for 6 years. I came back. I started working with Brown again, and then I got a call for He Got Game. Started doing He Got Game only because Eric asked me. It started out, I just wanted to do some scratches on a couple of records. Ended up, I'm mixing 2 songs in one of the rooms, or they're mixing some songs in the other room because we had a deadline. And I'm doing 5.1 surround. And we were working at Daddy's house, Puffy's studio, and he was doing Godzilla at the time. So I'm like, I said, I need to get involved with these movies. You know what I'm saying? This is where it's at. So I started researching, doing the people that do film scores. So I started doing, favors for friends that were doing independent films. Started doing music for them, and just started going from there. Eventually, I got nominated for an Emmy Award for Ali Rap, which was on ESPN. Me and Chuck did the actual theme for it. Chuck narrated the whole thing, but ESPN hit me up after we delivered the song and said, "Yo, do you know how to score?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And they were like, I guess there was a problem with whoever was doing the score. I don't know what it was, but he was like, "You could do the score, we'll pay you whatever it is. Boom, we need this like yesterday." I'm like, "All right." So I did the score in a night.
Wow.
Literally. And then the next day I got called back saying, "Yo, this is great. We just need a couple of changes." And, because this was going to be on TV. So they needed one of the themes that I did to go in and out of commercial, like what they call it, a splash, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Like, all right. So I made a splash for it to go out. And boom, it was out, and that was like maybe November, I think, or at the end of that year, 2006. And then 2007, I was nominated for Outstanding Music Composition. Didn't win, but was nominated. So that started me on the, how can I get my stuff in movies and do things like that. I ended up doing the commercial, the trailer for Selma. And started working on other movies. And then, that area is hard to penetrate because especially big directors, they find a guy or girl or composer that really fits what they see their vision always is. Like Danny Elfman almost always does the score for what's this dude? The guy that did Batman, Tim Burton. Tim Burton directs, these weird movies with Johnny Depp, and Danny Elfman is like the perfect person to bring that dude's vision to life musically. Danny Elfman used to be Boingo, but also did the first 2 Batmans with Michael Keaton. Danny does those type of movies. And then, you got John Williams, who does the scores for like Superman, and he does Star Wars, and he does those huge, epic movies like that.
Right.
Hans Zimmer. So these dudes usually work very closely with these big directors who like, "Yo, this is my man right here. I know he's gonna just provide the perfect music for my landscape." So to get into that zone, you got to hook up with somebody and really, like, it's almost like being in a band.
Right.
That director has to sit there and go, "Yo, this dude is, he perfectly embodies musically what I'm seeing visually." And once you do that, you locked in. Other than that, it's difficult. So I do a lot of independent films because I'm very flexible. I do those kind of things. I just did this Rucker 50. It's a documentary about the Rucker Park. It's on Netflix. And I work with that production team a lot. I'm doing a documentary about my B-boy crew, the Bronx Boys, the first all-Latino B-boy crew, started in 75. So
wow. It's incredible. It's incredible.
these kind of things, you kind of got to get in where you fit in, and the more flexible you are, the better it is for you, because anybody can write a beat, you know what I mean? But composing something that actually elicits a very specific emotion they want to get out of people, that can be challenging.
Got you. Well, I mean, that's amazing. All the things that you've done, from being a b-boy, right? You said graph writer, right?
Yep.
And then DJ, and Public Enemy, all of Long Island, all the production, Slick Rick, Beastie Boys, DMC, again, Public Enemy, and so many others, to scoring films for ESPN and television, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like it's nonstop. Creativity flowing for Johnny Juice. So talk to me about radio. Okay, now it looks like you've came and went, and you've gotten, you left working with Chuck and back with Chuck and on and on and on over the years. So talk to me about the radio show And You Don't Stop you did with Chuck D.
Well, I used to do radio well before that. I did RHU, Hofstra University, while Chuck was doing BAU, Delphi University.
Okay.
And we had our show. Matter of fact, Busta, Brown, and Dinko used to answer the phones.
Wow. Okay, that's dope. That's dope.
They would take shout outs. So I was doing radio anyway. Matter of fact, there's a 1988 article, not article, but the whole that whole month. I don't know if it's the month. They did it weekly, but it's a Village Voice edition. It was a hip hop edition. On the cover it has all these hip hop cats. 1988, and they mentioned every radio show that did hip hop at the time. And they gave me a real big shout out, because I was doing probably the most progressive stuff on the radio at the time, DJ wise. And with Jeff Boss, who passed away a few years ago. And Chuck's first love was always radio. So he's like, whenever you get a chance to do radio, let's do it again. So we were doing internet radio for a while. Chuck got a call from to do Air America, but that was talk, but he wanted to do radio like we used to. He finally got a BAI. He hit me up. He says, Juice, we got to do something for this. So we came up with And You Don't Stop, which was kind of like the 60 minutes of radio shows. So they would be segmented, and we would do individual segments that everybody could spin off and do on their own, but it could also be combined together to make kind of like a big Voltron. So there was a segment on females in hip hop, segment on songs in the right direction, where we think hip hop should go.
Right.
And there was overseas hip hop, which was all about rap from everywhere else outside of America. So we had all these different segments, and when you put them together, you had 2 hours worth of great radio content. And we did that. I did that to about 2014. Until that was the last time where, right after the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2013, right after that year, I kind of left the camp permanently.
Got you. Well, I was going to ask you about you were inducted into the Long Island Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with PE, and I was going to ask you, how did you feel about being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Long Island Hall of Fame?
Well, the Long Island Hall of Fame was cool. I was actually the liaison for that.
Okay.
I'm also on the Education Advisory Board for the Long Island Music Hall of Fame. And it's definitely more grassroots than the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that was real ceremonial. I got to meet people that I haven't met before, but I was talking to producer Jack Douglas. He's the guy that produced the original Walk This Way for Aerosmith. And he also did Imagine for John Lennon. He's that dude. And he told me how he voted for PE to go in. Apparently he had a vote. And he's a mentor to one of my best friends, Brian Hargrove, who's also a phenomenal musician and producer as well. So we spoke about this kind of thing, and he asked me, how does it feel? And I'm like, it doesn't feel like anything. And he almost felt like I disrespected him, but I'm like, let's be honest here. This isn't our thing. This is your guys' thing.
Right.
So while it's cool to be recognized, but who do you really want recognition by?
Right.
When I met members of Muddy Waters Band, I'm talking about the Muddy Waters blues singer from Chicago. When I went out to Chicago and did work with his band members, that was special. When I met cats like Isaac Hayes and I met and Wayne Vaughn, who wrote Let's Groove Tonight for Earth and Fire, or the Emotions, who I know, Miss Wanda Vaughn and her daughters. When they recognize what I do, I think that I connect more to that than being in a room with a whole bunch of people that don't really know who we are anyway.
Right. Well, I mean, you're right, and I totally understand your perspective on that. Well, I guess what I'm really trying to get at is that everything that you went through with PE, getting credit and not getting credit, that
kind of thing.
that roller coaster ride. Did you feel any fulfillment when you were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with them?
Nope.
Got you. Understood. Okay.
I felt more fulfillment standing right next to Mr. Harry Belafonte when we talked. I had a good 10-minute conversation that had nothing to do with music and had more to do with life.
Wow. Okay.
That meant more to me. You know what I'm saying? I spoke to Dave Grohl from Nirvana / Foo Fighters, and we had a talk that had nothing to do with music. It had to do with him playing Devil and Tenacious D movie with Jack Black, and it was hilarious. I spoke to John Fogerty. Those kind of conversations mean more to me because, to be honest with you, I've gotten to situations where I'm sitting there working on a song with somebody that's a legend to me, and they have no idea of what I've done with PE or anything else. But it doesn't matter because when we're done with the session, they're like, "Yo, man, you're phenomenally talented." And when they say that, I'm like, good, because that observation is not based on what you thought I've done before.
Got you. Okay.
It's done on how you see me now. So when I get on a pair of turntables now and I scratch, I don't sound like some DJ from 1987, 88. I sound like some new DJ that can do all that wild shit that they're doing now, which is very rare for somebody my age. Or when I do what I do, I'm still good now. So I don't rest on those laurels.
Got you. So speaking of that, how did you ever cultivate your DJ style? How did you approach it and make what Johnny Juice became? How did you, curate that?
Well, I'm a percussionist. I was a percussionist before I was a DJ. So I play congas and bongos, and my scratches mimic that. So when you hear my bongos, you're hearing that.
Got it. Okay.
So you're hearing what I hear musically as an expression, an expressive output. So it's not necessarily, let me do this transformer, or let me do this open, fader, 2-click flare or something like that. You're hearing what musically I'm trying to represent. It's just the turntable happens to be that instrument at the time.
Very nice. So why did you originally choose to be, a battle style DJ or a turntablist versus a club DJ? What was your motivation, to want to scratch and do the tricks and everything?
There wasn't. That was just part of being a well-rounded DJ to me. I was still a club DJ. I was still a party DJ. I did all the parties on Long Island.
Wonderful. Okay.
You could ask Brown and them dudes. They're like, yo, Juice is doing that party. We're going. Or I'll do the clubs, and the same thing. I did the clubs in Manhattan, all of that. So that part of me wasn't like, it didn't take some kind of second place to my scratching, priority, because it wasn't. Scratching to me was just part of being a well-rounded DJ, and I played every genre.
Absolutely. And you're right, because most of the DJs that came from the 80s, I'll say, were all well-rounded DJs. They did everything. You know what I mean? No doubt about it. So, okay, so let's move on. What is the Odyssey?
The Odyssey, I'm glad you asked that, came about from one of my endorsement deals with a company called Cakewalk. I was working with their software, so I was using the record and everything, and I needed a new PC because it doesn't work on Mac. So they introduced me to a guy named Kevin, who was a CEO of a company called Rain, R-A-I-N, Rain Computers. And I went and bought a few computers from him. And then before you know it, we found out we both had a love of food. So we go hang out and, go to restaurants in Manhattan. And then I found out when I called him back one day about, upgrading my computers, because I've upgraded them quite a few times over the years, he didn't work for the company no more. He says, I'm not doing that anymore, but we can go out and get something to eat. So we did. Then eventually he hit me up saying that now that I'm not doing that anymore, I want to be an artist, because he was a bass player and he was tired of being, also not recognized. And you're the bass player, you're part of the rhythm section. You're not really standing out front as the lead. He says, I want to do a solo album. Would you do scratches on my records? I'm like, sure, send them over to me. He emailed them to me. I told them honestly, only a couple of them needed scratching. I could do all of them, but you don't need it. Again, I only do what's needed, even though he was willing to pay me for all of them. I said, I'll take your money, but honestly, as a producer, I wouldn't scratch on all of this stuff. So then he was like, well, do you got any beats? Sure. Sent them up some stuff. Yo, can I write to that? Sure. Before you know it, we have an album done. So KJ is a traditionally trained bass player that went to college, got a degree. You know, he comes from a jazz background, a heavy jazz background, but he can play anything. And the music I do is very eclectic. It has a lot of different influences. I also have a huge Latin jazz background as well as soul and funk, just like everybody else that grew up in the city in the late 60s, early 70s. And we just kind of fit. So we started making these songs together. And that's how the Odyssey came about.
Wow, incredible. So from the production side, what do you use now to make beats, and what is your approach to your production?
Well, initially it was an MPC and software, but it doesn't really matter. I've used everything from Cakewalk to Ableton to Logic to MPCs to Machine, you name it. I've used it on Odyssey records. Gotcha. And of course, a lot of live instruments. I have a bunch of Roland keyboards. I had a Roland endorsement. I had a Triton I used to use. I have a Roland Hand Sonic, which I play drums, you know, electronic drums with my hands. I also have a regular drum kit. I play drums. I have my acoustic instruments like my congas and my bongos. You know, so whatever is available, I'll make it work.
Got you. So you had said that your approach to DJing was your musicianship, right? Because you play drums and other instruments. What is your production approach? How do you approach making music?
That depends as well. I might be in the shower and I'll hear a bass line in my head, right?
Okay.
I come out to my setup, turn it on. I pull out my bass. I have a bass. I play it. Or I play it on the keyboards, just so I can have it there for later. Then when I come back, I hear that bass line. I'm like, oh man, I remember that. I'm supposed to add drums to that. I add drums to it. Or sometimes I'm DJing, just playing music, just for the hell of it. I'm like, oh shit, these drums are stupid. And I'm like, I gotta use this. Throw it in the computer real quick. I'm like, I'll get back to it. Or sometimes I have the time. Every song starts out different, depending on what hits me. You know what I'm saying? Just like when you hear flavor, the choice is yours. First thing you think of is boom, 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 right? That bass line is what hits you.
Right.
But who's to say that's the thing that started their song writing process?
Right.
Maybe they heard the drums and they were like, oh, come on. And they were like, damn, you know what? I need to add a bass to this.
Right. The bass line could have been the last piece of the element to finish the record. You're right.
Right. So you don't know. But to me, it usually starts off with me, you know, just something just pops out to me. You know what I'm saying? I saw a movie the other day, and there was a profound statement in it, and I'm like, But it was said with such rhythm. That, you know, the line that the actor used, and I'm like, that's almost melodic. You know, so now I'm like, the way he said what he said, you know, and you'll pay for this, da, 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 da. I'm like, I'm like horns, and I'm like, now I got a whole, you know, symphony going on in my head. I'm like, how do I make that this?
Right, right.
So, you know, it just depends, man. Kind of like that movie Tap with Gregory Hines, where he's outside and a car's running over that metal grate, and he's like, "Oh man, that's a rhythm. I could tap that." And he's like, "Yeah, I could tap that." You know, inspiration comes from everywhere.
Got it. So, as a DJ, producer, songwriter, composer, have you worked with any other artists that we haven't mentioned yet? Who else have you worked with?
I worked with Stevie Wonder.
Wow. Okay.
I worked with Mavis Staples from the Staple Singers. Yeah. I'm actually redoing that song Alphabet Street by Prince with Cat Glover, his dancer that did the original song with him. She got a whole bunch of songs that was locked away in Prince's vault when he passed away, and she just went through a lengthy process for her lawyers to get that stuff back. And one of the stipulations is that when she does get the masters back, the only one that could actually work on them are me.
Wow. Okay. So
Yep,
so what's interesting is that it's like you're the most known unknown, respectfully, right? So it's like, you know, you've done so much work that people know about, but yet so much more that people don't know about. It's like you're erased from the history. However, you're always the go-to guy. We need to go get Juice to do the scratching, or we need him to do the score of the film, or the documentary, or the composing. It's always like you're still the go-to guy to get the job done. Would you agree?
I mean, there's some truth to that. But the thing is, it's like, you said I'm the most known unknown, but unknown or known to who? You see what I'm saying? The people in the business that need to know.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So the thing is, it's like, it doesn't really matter, honestly. I mean, it wasn't until the 90s that the producer became the spotlight dude, right?
Right.
Who produced the show by Dougie Fresh?
I mean, no one really knows. You've heard about Teddy Riley doing the beat.
You
Right?
get the beat, but who produced it? I'll tell you who produced it, a guy named Ali Cotton. But you don't know because you don't care. Because back in those days, they weren't running around with shiny suits saying, "Hey, I produced this record. It's a Ali Cotton production. What's up? Nobody cared.
Right.
You don't hear on Stevie Wonder's record, in the beginning of the records, when the song comes on, yeah, Stevie Wonder in the house. You don't hear that because it's not part of the song. You don't care.
Right.
Like, does anybody regular know that Rod Temperton wrote a lot of those Michael Jackson records and wrote Love Times Love and Give Me the Night for George Benson? No.
Yeah,
Does everybody notice that, who wrote Human Nature for Michael Jackson? He was the keyboard player for Toto, right?
Yeah, you assume
Steve Picaro.
You assume it's Quincy Jones, right?
Yeah, but Quincy Jones only wrote one song on Thriller. He co-wrote PYT with James Ingram. That's it. Right. Because what happens is in hip-hop, which tends to recreate and redefine stuff, they've kind of made it so that the guy that wrote the beat is the producer thing. And that's not true. See, what happens is we've come a long way from the way the process of records were made. The producer literally produced a record. And when I mean produced, I mean it's like, say, produce me a cup of coffee in 20 minutes. Somebody has to find that coffee and bring it to you. Now, the guy that brings you that coffee could make that coffee, or he can buy it from someone that made that coffee, or he can go to the guy that grew the beans, that crushed it, that made the coffee. It doesn't matter. The label just says, I want this record done and I need it delivered on this desk by this day, and someone's in charge of that process. That process was oversaw by a dude called a producer. Right. The reason why that producer was there was because back in those days, how many people have ever been in a real studio? Very little. They were very expensive. So you needed somebody that understood that process. Doesn't mean that he was the guy that wrote everything or did everything or any of that. He just had to be the guy that put the right people together.
Right. So that's why, a lot of people get credit for doing things that they didn't actually do, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by actually do. I'm a producer. See, when you hear that, most people automatically assume that means the guy that wrote it. I didn't say he wrote anything.
Right.
I didn't say he composed anything. All I said was he produced this.
Yeah.
So that's where there's a disconnect, So now, and I find this real weird because a lot of guys say, I produced that beat. You don't produce a beat. You program a beat. You compose music. You write lyrics. You produce a record.
Yeah. See, that's exactly where the confusion is in hip hop. You know what I mean? Because people truly don't understand the real roles. They just throw it all in one thing and say, he's the producer. He did everything.
Well, look at it like this, right? Let's put it this way. Let's say I do a beat. I give the beat to Nas, and I give the beat to Afro Man. Same exact beat. Nas' song becomes a hit. I produced that Nas record. Afro Man's song is whack as hell. You think I'm going to take credit for producing that? The thing about it is, you didn't produce either one. Nas probably picked the beat. So he had a say over what sound he wanted. He did whatever song he wanted to do on top of that beat. So all I did was just provide an element. The thing is, a producer has, ideally, in a traditional sense, has a control over the process. It's his vision, kind of like a director of a movie.
Right.
This is why you could have a song like "Walk On By," which was written by Hal David and Burt Bacharach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was done by Dionne Warwick initially, But then Isaac Hayes did it, and his version doesn't sound anything like Burt Bacharach's and Hal David's version for Dionne Warwick.
That's correct.
It's been used for Warning by Biggie, So that's what a producer does. Isaac didn't recompose anything, but he changed the texture of it. He made the sound different. His is haunting and epic, whereas Burt and Hal's version was hollow and melancholy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So the producer changes the way that song is seen, and that's why there's always a whole bunch of remakes, and it's like, that remake actually sounds better than this one. And it's the producer. They didn't actually write the music. It was already done. And look at live bands like Aerosmith. Jack Douglas didn't write Walk This Way. The band wrote it. But then why is Jack Douglas the producer?
Right. Makes sense. Absolutely. So what new projects are you currently working on?
Well, somebody brought up Jack Douglas because I started a band with DMC. So this band is called Ghost in the Hall. It's a rock band. It's me and KJ from the Odyssey. Brian Hargrove, who's a multi-instrumentalist on drums, and then we have multiple guitar players, and D. And D's voice is sounding real strong. Matter of fact, the last batch of vocals he sent over, I pitched it down a half step, and he sounds exactly like he sounds on King of Rock.
Nice. You know what? I think I have the vinyl on that particular record. It's a colored vinyl, right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, dope. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, we're doing a bunch of rock songs, different types of rock songs. Some of them are very Creedence Clearwater Revival-ish. Some of them are hardcore, Led Zeppelin-ish sounding. Some of them are, more Southern rockish, but they're just different styles of rock. Because he's considered the king of rock, we might as well give him all types of rock-type songs to rock to. And they're very personal accounts. Some of them are about his drug addiction, his alcohol addiction that he talked about countless times. Some of them about him making, socio-political statements about race and things that people are used to hearing from D. But a lot of them are real, funky grooves that happen to have some, some rock tinge to them.
Wow. So that's the newest project that's out now. What is it called again?
The name of the album, I don't have a name of the album, but the name of the group is called Ghost in the Hall.
Nice.
And look for that also in the metaverse. So there'll be the ability to come and see us perform in the metaverse in 3D. We already went out and had some stuff done, so it's pretty dope. So we're getting ready to do that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So you're helping produce? Are you DJing for the group as well?
I'm writing, producing. I'm producing the whole album. I'm writing most of it. And obviously I'm DJing, and I'm also playing some instrumentation on it.
Very nice. Sounds like it's going to be incredible. Absolutely. So let me ask you a question. How do you feel, as a DJ? Okay, let's go to the DJ side of you. How do you feel about the current DJ culture and the state of the DJ?
Well, as far as battle DJs, they're just constantly pushing the envelope, man. There's some real great DJs doing stuff, like my boys, the Scratch Perverts, who, they had their heyday back in the 2000s, but, I'm seeing, them guys doing some things. They did some phenomenally progressive things in the DMC battles, like when they pulled a Jimi Hendrix and scratched feedback. So they literally took the needles off the record, and they put the bass so high or the volume so high, so that even though the needle wasn't on the record, you know what happens when you get feedback? It's like, and then they started cutting the feedback. They made a beat out of that. It's ridiculous.
Right.
See, you know, that's the kind of shit I'm talking about. Hubert's still pushing the envelope. DJ Craze is like phenomenal. Cats like Total Eclipse. These are guys that they're not even the brand newest batch of DJs, and they're doing some phenomenal stuff. They got that little 14-year-old kid that won the DMC World Championship a few years back from Japan. So
absolutely,
battle-wise, they're pushing the envelope, you know, with the new technology. There's no reason why somebody can't perform just a great mix, you know, scratching, you know, notwithstanding. But there shouldn't be any reason why somebody should have a train wreck DJ set. But the one thing I hate about today's culture is that people are becoming speed DJs. So they'll throw on, like, since they're able to have every song known to man on their laptop, they DJ for, like, you know, not even a verse, and they throw another song on. So if you have 3 DJs in the night, by the time that headlining DJ comes on, that the first 2 DJs done played every hot song from 1987 all the way up to 2010. So it's like, you know, it's just ridiculous. And I'm like, you know, I like the 3rd verse on that song. We ever gonna hear that shit? Nope, because halfway through the dude just throws on his other record, and it's like almost like musical chairs, but the music version, and it sucks because, you know, I like to hear whole songs. I like to hear the breakdowns on joints. I like people being creative, and I like being taken on a journey. And it's hard to do that when you get these little snippets of songs like all night.
Right, absolutely. Well, I totally agree with you. I just wanted to hear, you know, from your perspective, what you thought. You know what I mean? So, question, I want to go back to one other thing. You had mentioned about your B-boy crew, right?
Right, yep.
Talk to me. Okay, so it's not just DJing with you. It's not just production. It's not just songwriting and your history with Public Enemy and Long Island. And, you know, you're also a graffiti writer and a B-boy. You had mentioned about this documentary coming out on Netflix. Give me just a little background on your B-boy and graffiti history.
All right, well, I used to write graffiti with my cousin. I'm going to call him Cup One because I don't want to say his real name. He's younger than me, actually. And Cup used to write with Greg Nice before Greg Nice was a beatbox and before he was a rapper. Okay. Because Greg was a writer. You know, I don't know if you knew Greg Nice was the beatbox for T.I. Rock.
Absolutely. No question.
Right, so... And Greg also writes beats. A lot of those beats on them early Nice and Smooth records are his.
Yeah.
So Greg, you know, used to write. I used to write with my cousin Bud, you know, and then I started b-boying, got down with these cats, and from who now are known in the b-boy world, like Freddie Fresh and cats like that. I eventually became a member of the Bronx Boys Rocking Crew, which also ironically started as a graffiti crew in '74. It became a rocking crew in '75. I say rocking, but to most people, they know it as breakdancing. The traditional term is rocking.
Right.
Most of the crews back in those days had the word rock in it. Star Child LaRock, Bronx Boy Rocking Crew, Rockwell Association, you know, everything was rock. So, Dynamic Rockers, you name it. Mm-hmm. So TBB was the first All Latino B-boy crew, and probably the second crew ever created behind the Zulu Kings, MZK. But I say probably because, you know, somebody will probably find something that, you know, knows this and that, whatever. But this is very early in the game.
Right.
And 2 of our members in 1979, the crew was broken up by the then President Batch. When he broke up the crew, 2 of those members asked permission to start a new crew. That new crew was Rocksteady Crew. So two of our members eventually created the Rocksteady Crew, Jimmy Lee and Jimmy D. And a few years before Legs was involved with Rocksteady, even though ironically Legs was a TBB member at one point.
Okay.
Our crew has a deeply ingrained history as far as the dance. So we thought it was a good idea to kind of, you know, highlight that, especially since like some of the foundation moves, like the 3-step, was created by Batch, who was the president, TBB, and his brother Abby, who's the current president, you know, brought Russian steps, helicopters to the game, and I'm the current vice president of the crew.
Currently, wow, okay.
Yeah. I've been a vice president for about maybe 5 to 8 years, something like that. Can't remember.
Wow. So your thoughts on breaking, being a part of the Olympics in 2024?
I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I'm happy that it's getting exposure, but how are you going to judge something that's as subjective as style? You know, sure, you could judge power moves like, you know, air flares and head spins and things like that. But at what point are they just performing gymnastics and not dancing?
Right.
But that just, you know, compete as a gymnast. Because even the gymnasts now are doing air flares. That came from the B-boys.
Right.
Now, yeah, B-boys assimilated regular flares and atomic flares and virgin flares. We got those from gymnasts. But then we created air flares, and now the gymnasts are doing that in their floor routines.
Well, see, that's why when I first heard about it a few years back, that's why it kind of made a little sense to me because of the gymnastics aspect of breaking and b-boying. That's why I thought it was originally, you know, included or considered for the Olympics. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. And you know what? It's great. You know, it's great as long as you don't lose sight of what it really means to be a dancer, because you still got to dance. You see what I'm saying? You still have to have a connection to the music. So, yeah, I mean, you could go and do like a 2-second top rock, and then all of a sudden, bam, flare, 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 air flare, air flare, air flare, air flare, 1990, air flare, head spins. I'm like, yo, dude, are you going to ever dance to the music? Where's the dance part?
Right. Well, that's the one thing when I've talked to a lot of legendary dancers about this. Their concern is having the fundamentals there and somebody who can actually judge based off of, you know, a legendary, you know, status. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't include the foundation and the people who started it, how do you even have this included in the Olympics? It's going to be watered down and mainstream. You know what I mean?
But there's still cats that are going to be part of it that know, you know. But the thing about it is, there's already been a disconnect from a lot of the big corporate sponsored battles like Red Bull, BC1, and things like that, where it's like, you know, at what point are we not dancing anymore? We're just you know, spinning around. So that's always been a concern. The Olympics didn't change that, but now it's political.
Right.
Now it's political, because now it's like, you know, who gets clout and cachet, you know, because, you know, whatever, because now they're on the Olympic committee or what have you. And I know that stuff very, very well, because I was on the national taekwondo team for many years.
Wow.
So, you know, I know how that works. And I remember when taekwondo became a demonstration sport in '88 and became a full-time sport in '92. And I was supposed to be in the '92 Olympics. I ended up getting hurt when I was in the military, and that kind of ruined everything for me, actually. But I was nasty at that. And the way we fought for Olympic style taekwondo was never the same as the way we actually really fought for it, you know, in the class. So, and then little by little, the classes started, you know, most schools started, you know, directing their instruction towards Olympic style taekwondo. So after a while, it's like, you know, hands always down pretty much, a lot of feet. You can't kick you can kick to the face, but you can't punch to the face. So a lot of people don't really block, because by the time you see a foot coming at you, you can just get out of the way, you know. So a lot of them don't keep their hands up. So now it affects how you actually really fight, whereas before it didn't. So that these are things that have happened in not just the breakdance, quote unquote, you know, being inducted to the Olympics, but just anything that becomes an Olympic sport, or even the UFC. The UFC used to be anything goes, no time limit, and the only thing you couldn't do was you couldn't eye gouge and you couldn't bite. And now there's timed rounds. You know, you have to wear a certain type of, you know, outfit. You know, if you grab onto the fence or if you're on the ground too long, they can stand you up. They had to create rules because
Right.
Because they couldn't, you know, they could only fight in certain states, because the athletic commissions in places like Vegas and New York were very strict about what they considered, you know, a proper match, you know, a physical confrontation match that's for sport purposes. So they had to adhere to a lot of that stuff.
Right. So, 2024, breakdancing, the Olympics. You have a vast history of b-boying. Were you Johnny Juice as a b-boy and a graph writer?
I wasn't as a graph writer. I was as a b-boy, but I was called a lot of things depending on who saw me. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So, I was called Cheeky Thing by some people. I mean, little dude, so depends on who was watching me.
Got you.
I have a funny story. I was talking to Joe Conzo, who wrote Born in the Bronx, which is the book. And I've known Joey, like I said, I grew up next door to this dude in the 70s in the Bronx. So he brings his brother to a park jam I'm DJing at, and he introduces me. He goes, yo, Johnny, this is my brother Jared. Jared, this is Johnny Juice from PE. And Jared goes, that's Johnny from 2E. And Joe's like, what are you talking about? That's Johnny from the neighbor, Johnny. Joey didn't recognize that I was the same dude.
Wow.
So I lived next door to this dude all through the 70s. I moved to the Bronx in the 80s, right? And he knows me as the guy the Puerto Rican dude that was in PE doing the scratches. Meanwhile, his brother was like, that's the neighbor that was at our house all the time, eating, mommy's food and blah, blah, blah. So it's funny how some of them don't even recognize I was the same guy.
Wow. So that's what you meant by depending on who's,
right.
who it is determination of who you are, right?
Right.
Wow. That's interesting. So,
and the whole time I'm thinking Joe knew me is like, yeah, I'm the dude from next door, right? I'm like, so you didn't, this whole time you didn't know I was the same dude? Oh man, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. So Johnny Juice, legendary DJ, graph writer, b-boy, producer, right? Okay, so tell me what's in the future for DJ Johnny Juice.
Well, musically, I'm still working on different projects. Whatever interests me, whatever makes me say, wow, that's something I haven't done, or let's try this. I'm going to finally do 2 solo albums. One solo album is going to be with DJs, all DJs. I talked to Jazzy Jeff. He said he's down.
Okay.
D Styles, Rob Swift, those dudes. So a lot of the legendary dudes that, even some of them that came up after me, I still look up to them because when I came back from the military, I started scratching and doing that stuff again. And, I could always learn. I always look to people to learn new things, man. There's no ego. I'm humble and I look forward to learning new things from no matter where they come from. And so the DJ album is forthcoming. I am also going to be doing an album full of covers, but covers done my way, So I just did The Look of Love Over by Dusty Springfield, but it's a lot more hard and electronica mixed with a little bit of soul, a little hip-hop vibe. I'm doing vocals on it, too, because I do sing.
Wow.
As well as rhyme.
Oh,
right, so.
Okay, yes. And you know what? That is one thing that we didn't talk about. You rhyme as well. Incredible. What do you not do? But go ahead.
I don't do windows. But
me neither.
But there's a few albums coming out and a few books. I'm working on a book debating my Public Enemy book, but it will be called Behind Enemy Lines. And
okay.
and then I have one about my philosophy on life. It's military, martial arts, and music. And that one will explain my philosophies on hip-hop and life and how I use what I've learned throughout my life to get through the life I have now. I have a double bachelor's in electrical engineering and computer science. I have a master's degree. So, life isn't all about anything other than me, really exploring my personal growth.
Wow. That's amazing. So we got you're in a rock band with DMC. We have 2 DJ albums coming. And other projects. I mean, it all sounds amazing, and it looks like your future is bright, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of classic material coming. So how can our listeners continue to follow you and follow all the new releases that you got coming?
You can check me out on my Instagram. I'm DJ Johnny Juice. On Twitter, I'm just at Johnny Juice. On Facebook, I have a page. It's at Johnny Juice as well. And you can go to theodyssey.com. That's spelled TheOdddySY.com. We also have a YouTube channel. I have a Johnny Juice YouTube channel as well. You can always Google Johnny Juice. A bunch of stuff will come up, and some stuff that has nothing to do with me as well. And DM me, whatever, man. I also do mentorship programs. I teach at a couple of youth centers. One of them in Long Island, actually, still in Uniondale, right around the corner from Charlie Brown's crib.
Okay.
So, I teach music production, DJing, computer literacy, and whatever else the kids need to learn to make themselves more productive members of society. So, I'm around for whatever.
Right. Well, listen, man, I want to thank you for allowing me to interview you. I mean, everything that you've done, for the DJ culture, for hip hop, from the production, the songwriting, the scoring. I mean, and even in the b-boy and in the graph world. I mean, you've contributed all the way across the board for the DJ culture and hip hop culture. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, man, for what you do, because you provide a valuable service and illuminating, a lot of things for people that necessarily wouldn't know.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So we're going to keep this going. And this is Vinyl Esquire, the DJ podcast that uplifts the DJ culture and honors our legends. And you have been listening to the legendary DJ, platinum producer, composer, turntablist, engineer, b-boy, graph writer, MC, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, and incredible DJ, the legendary Johnny Juice.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Hello world, I want to welcome you to Vinyl Esquire, the podcast that delivers culture, truth, music.